there's no real history, and I can be wrong here, but there's no real history of anybody healing leprosy before Jesus. Like Jesus came and entered into that stench as well, right? So the reality of like the stench in the grave is like, this guy is dead. Like the body starts to smell, the story starts to smell, the reality of his life starts to smell, and this guy's dead, right? So just the reality of the stench, it is discouraging and it is despairing because sometimes things smell, right? But Jesus comes and is not afraid of that, right? And I think this is where you're going to go next. But like, what do we do with that? Like, well, we let him look at it. We let him see it. We let him see all of it, you know. And I have in my notes here, just like I've told Jesus parts of my story, but have I told him all of my story? I've confessed and I've sought healing in particular places in my life, but have I showed him all of the places?
Poco a poco vamos a llegar. Somos peregrinos and you know that's who we are. We make our way. Hey, hey.
Hey, I'm Father Montgomery.
What's up, everybody? I'm Father Innocent. I just got back from solitude.
I'm Father PC.
And I'm Father Angelus. I'm so happy to be with you all.
Like us or with everybody?
Generally, people out there.
There's the
you guys, I don't know.
For the nice guys, they're sure not making it feel like they want to be here with us.
No, I do. No, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah,
No,
sorry.
you
I do.
just said
I have a great attitude. At least I have a good attitude, and I want to be here. I was just noting yesterday.
You wanted to be.
solitude.
You said I want to be back on solitude.
Right.
Whoa. Which
This doesn't
implies.
sound like no.
I didn't want you to take it personal.
You looked at me.
You
Looked me in the eyes.
you tapped me. Said, just so you know, you guys, because of you.
I wish you were back on solitude as well.
At least, yeah, that's fair. And then tell us a little bit about how just real quick for solitude, like what it is, and then what you like. Anything?
Yeah.
worth
So
sharing?
we're blessed to just have, as friars, we have 2 retreats a year. We have our own solitude retreat, which I went on the past week, and then we have a community retreat with the brothers. So the solitude retreat is a place that you go, again, usually 8 or so days just by yourself with Jesus.
Can we just say that you went 10?
Well, it worked out. Take just
What do you mean it worked out?
A little travel day? What we got going on
they
here?
were.
It worked out. He's the superior. He's his mug. You can do everything.
Well, it was travel days, and so I just used that. I just used them well.
Where are you traveling to? Can we like peek behind the curtain here?
I'm just a big fan of like when you go on solitude, you get 8 full days, and so I scheduled the 2 days to come back, but then I
You
realized,
scheduled on 2 full other days.
Yeah.
Hey, we get that time too. So
yeah,
Who's we?
our house.
our house, bro. We
okay.
get long.
Who's the superior of your house, bro?
I am.
Yeah,
We believe in maximum prayer.
I believe in the Constitution.
nah, bro. Yeah, I do too. For the record. So anyway, so it's just a big blessing to be able to go to a place, and you just really enter into the silence, the prayer, the rest, right? And so, so just I'm just getting back from that. I ended that last night, so just diving in this morning, just being with the brothers and seeing the postulants. It's been awesome. But that was the joke, is that yesterday I'm like all by myself with Jesus and just loving life, and then today I'm just like, here we are, back home.
Is it too personal of a question to ask? Because I think people might be wondering who have never done it. Like, okay, so like, what do you do all day? Like, so what's like kind of a rough outline of your of a day, your schedule? Do you have a schedule?
I do. Yeah. So
And you can just talk generally. Like, I have some prayer time. I have.
yeah,
a
I mean,
walk.
so I think that's the grace, is that there's just I feel like a pretty concrete invitation from the Lord to really just go and be with Him. So there's just a lot of adoration, and there's just like a good rhythm. So there's obviously a good rhythm of prayer, and then there's just like some rest time there. Where I went was just close to the beach, so I just walked on the beach every day, and so there's like a good rhythm of like that type of exercise. And then it's just beautiful, because I think our life's pretty intense and pretty full. So like come with the kind of the evenings, like you have a meal, and then Father Angelus encouraged me to take the Capuchin Way, which are Lives of the Franciscan Saints. So I would read a Franciscan saint every night, and then have my kind of closing prayer, like last holy hour of the day, and then like 8:15 go to bed, and then get up early for prayer. I'm a big morning guy on these things, so just get in, like go to bed at 8:15 and wake up at 5-ish, you know, you just get a lot of sleep. Right. And then, so you just feel so rested, but then you're able to pray. And so, yeah, so there's just, you're just like I felt the Lord was just asking me to just dive into scripture and be with him. So there wasn't a lot of it there reading or things like that. So it's funny, like when I tell my mom I'm going away on my solitude retreat, people think it's like vacation,
Right.
which has that like, oh, you just kind of sleep in and you read some books and just kind of be with the Lord. And it has a feel of just super beautiful to be with him, and the time slows down and so you're not in a hurry. But it is like, I felt like I was going to the desert. Like the Lord wants my attention. He wants my heart. So it's not like leisure time where you're like, just kind of like, oh, just hanging out. Like you really want to like respond to the invitation to go be with the Lord. So you're pushing into this prayer time to be with him. And so there's an intensity to it. And so it's not like just vacation where like downtime. You're really trying to push in with the Lord to the gift of prayer and silence. And there's a purification that happens even in that. You're not running to other things. And so, but it was just, I felt it's just overwhelmed by God's just goodness and the grace. And so it was just such a gift.
And I remember that like as a first year of house, maybe sometimes you go on, we have like a hermitage, which is kind of like more or less, depending on the house, maybe a 48-hour monthly retreat.
Yeah, that minimum necessary.
If you want to just go out and say the house, like Our Lady Angels or Father Pure Toussaint is superior, that's perfectly fine.
I mean, you guys do normal stuff. This is the unique house.
We actually have an apostolate that we have to keep going. Where your guys live in, like the focus of the house are the Pashtons.
Yeah.
So you have the freedom to go away for 7 days for a hermitage. Like, that's cool.
Yeah.
But we don't, because we have
Fair enough.
kids to take care of. We have
fair
responsibilities.
It's fair.
Guys are working in the office. And so sometimes guys can only get away for like 2 days. But anyway, but they're praying and the desires there. But I'm not being defensive about any of this. Please follow my mind. You were sharing.
But I remember like it sometimes like because you would go without any distraction or anything like that. And like for 48 hours at some point, like it can feel like kind of a lot. I mean, it's not necessarily like easy. You can only nap so much, and like, oh, I mean, there's
totally.
PT's like, I rock the nap.
But I think that's a part of it is that that's when you want to
Right.
push in, is that, okay, Lord, like you're real, you're here. And that again, I want to avoid like, this is a gift of consecrated life, like going on retreat. And so, I'm overwhelmed by the gift of having space and time.
Totally, 100%.
But this is the gift of like every day, like I'm offering it for people who can't do it, right? I think of my own siblings who can't do an 8-day silent retreat. So I'm actually offering it for, like, okay, like I want Jesus, I give you them. Like I give you our friends, I give you people who can't do this. And then the grace it reaches them. But like to say that it's like a confrontation, right? Because you're tired, you're distracted. But the Lord is like, okay, like, will you stay with me? Will you keep, going deeper in this place of prayer? So it's pretty awesome, but challenging.
And there's a lot of Lenten themes in there too, like just the reality of like, going away, some consecrated time, and then you can be distracted and you can be like, hey, do I have to keep doing this? Or hey, I'm hungry, or hey, I'm, so just the reality of like what our listeners are experiencing right now is just like, wow, okay. Lent is hard, and Lent, I'm tired, and I'm, and I want to do other things, or I want to eat what I gave up or something like that. But like, okay, what does it mean to lean in? And what does it mean to see Lent as consecrated time that just allows us then to keep going?
And I get, this is Father Innocent now for people, we talk back to back, but I get lonely. And so this particular solitude retreat was the first one, I think, since I've been a friar where I wasn't with other people or I wasn't directed. And so usually you're at a retreat house, so I can be on silent retreat with, 60 other priests, but there's something comforting to me about, okay, we're all in silence 8 days. We're all eating together, and, and then, and you're directed. So an hour a day, you're talking to someone about what the Lord's doing and they're giving you scriptures. But this was the first one where I felt the Lord was like, no, just me and you. You're going to be in solitude. So by yourself and no director.
I was like, oh, but I get lonely. I just want to, Jesus, I want to just, and it's not like bad. I'm like not talking to other people or I'm not, but it was just beautiful because the Lord was like, no, he wanted me to press in to let go of kind of any other security but him. And so I felt that. That was probably the bit challenging thing is that like, Father Mark, Mary, Father Angelus, like you guys.
But you talked to, like, when you ordered Dairy Queen and stuff like that.
Yeah, I actually
You
talked to the cashier.
people.
Sorry, I forgot about that.
Pizza's right up the street.
I know where all the spots at.
DoorDash, what's it called? DoorDash. Yeah, the DoorDash guy would come and he's
Thank you.
45 minutes later. He's like, no, I was on my own. Wow. Father Innocent didn't DoorDash.
No.
Yeah, let's just make it very
I'm
clear.
sure you didn't go to Dairy Queen.
I didn't.
I'm sure you did it. This wasn't a sarcastic one.
I didn't know.
Shall we?
We shall. Please.
Another
Chris.
smooth transition from Father Mark.
We're going to stop talking about what we were talking about, and now we're going to go on.
It's like, yeah. Oh, I'm done listening to you. Okay. And scene. Okay. So we're continuing with Lent. Thank you. We're continuing with Lent using our Lenten companion, also known as the Lenten companion. A personal encounter with the power of the gospel from Ascension.
We like Father Toups.
Yeah, Father Toups, who's an IPF guy, which I think we've talked about. But so the journey continues, right? And again, there's a journey. There's kind of a couple of journeys happening at the same time. One of them's with the authority of Jesus, which we're really going to get into next week. But also just the journey of surrendering, of kind of being stripped of some of our securities, and of being kind of clothed by kind of the fullness of whatever it is by Jesus. And so I think, like, if we go back to the last couple of weeks, there's this Samaritan woman at the well, and so she's dealing with sort of the results in the isolation of her own sin and shame. Okay, and then last week we were at the pool of Siloam, where there was the guy kind of with the isolation caused by physical blindness. And now here, and so like Jesus showed his like authority, right, over kind of the sin and the shame. He showed his authority over nature, over the blindness. He showed that he's the light of the world. And now it's like it's all kind of coming together, right? Now it's like a total darkness, and a total isolation, the darkness and the isolation of the tomb. And so the gospel of this week is the story of the account of Jesus' raising of Lazarus. And here there's gonna be a lot of beautiful things here, but I think first before kind of going on an emphasis with kind of our current theme, just to kind of spend some time with the gospel passage, because I think it's such an important passage, and I think there's so many components of it which are really, really like insightful and helpful, and give us great insight into the heart of God and sort of the mode of how Jesus is going to how he interacts with the world and with sin and with death and just his own heart for it. And so there's it begins with Jesus is in another town, and he hears that his friend is sick and dying. He says it can be for the glory of God, and he lets some time pass, and Lazarus dies. So he makes his way to Bethany, and on the way, right, he's met by at different times Martha and Mary. This is where Jesus weeps, which is really important. This is where they say, like, if you were here, like, you could have done something, and even now you could do something. They express their faith, and then eventually he goes to the tomb, and he says, Lazarus, like, roll away the stone, and Lazarus come out, and Lazarus is resurrected from the dead. And so instead of me, I guess, like, I'm just gonna kind of lay it out here, and I'll let, if anybody else wants to emphasize or kind of break open a part of the gospel, we can kind of go around and do that for a second here.
What do you got over there? You open that gospel up.
I was just following along, follow along at home. Like, once again, this is one of those gospels. It's famous. I mean, all the gospels are famous, but like in particular, people know this one well. The thing that always like jumps out to me is a couple of things. The first thing is there's the whole rolling away of the stone, and at the end, Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." The line before that, the dead man came out. His hands and feet were bound with bandages, and his face wrapped with a cloth. Yeah, with a cloth. 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 Cloth.
It's okay, buddy.
That tough with cloth. And Jesus said, unbind him and let him go. And I don't know if it's this instance, but it says basically take off his grave clothes. Like take off his clothes that he's been wearing in the grave. And I'm going to make him a new man, essentially. And this is something that is unparalleled. You know, okay, we have an Old Testament where Elijah does this. But this is something where a man who was dead is now alive. And just before this, Jesus talks to the Father and says, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. Right. And so it's just this beautiful movement of Jesus standing as the one who was sent by the Father to sent to us and for us so that we can have experienced life. And once again, he asks Lazarus to take off those clothes that he's wearing in the grave. So that way he can clothe us with new life and clothe us in the sense of we don't have to wear those things that we wore before, but we can be clothed, as you mentioned last episode, with glory, clothed with him, clothed with Jesus, and clothed with this newness of life. And we could come out of the shadows into the light. But yeah, it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing where, once again, just Jesus's emotion for Lazarus, a friend of his who he probably went over the house and watched the Super Bowl with, you know, just hung out and was just his boy. But in a real way, like he was his friend and he weeps. And the emotion that Jesus shows is beautiful too. But once again, just for me, the thing that's most striking is these moments. And I love these moments when Jesus is talking to his dad. It's like, Dad, I thank you so much for this opportunity so I could show everybody your glory. And it's not about Jesus, which is crazy, right? Like he's bringing back somebody for dead. It's not about him. It's about, thank you, Dad, for allowing me to have this moment just to once again, to show people how awesome you are, so they can believe in you. And then just allowing Lazarus, once again, the freedom to take off those clothes to put him on.
Yeah,
So-
beautiful. There's so much going on in this passage. I love it. And it's so good. I think it should just get our attention. There's very focused moments where Jesus gives an I am statement.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are the moments where we just want to pay attention because he's revealing something about himself, right? About his identity, kind of the deepest parts of who he is, right? So he says in this context of Mary and Martha, I am the resurrection and the life. I mean, and that's just striking. Like, I am the resurrection and the life, you know? And so Jesus, again, it's almost like a part of his name. It's a part of his deepest identity to speak life into darkness and to speak life into death. So it's just something super striking that he's obviously not worried about this. There's a real human reality where he weeps and because his friend has died, but he's just so confident in what his Father wants to do and the manifestation of his glory at this moment, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't want to repeat too much, but probably one of my top 3 favorite moments, because in the Gospels where Jesus looks to his Father and the veil's lifted, right? He, Father, you see me, you always see me, right? There's very few times when he directs, and speaks to his Father personally. But what's beautiful, the veil's lifted. It's not, we just get to see what's always happening, right? Jesus always is living in that communion with his Father. These moments, we just get to see it. And it's just one of the most profound things is, like, I just probably think he looked up often. It's just like, Father, you see me, you always see me. You hear me, you always hear me. And I just think it's wonderfully intimate. And I think this is what Jesus reveals about his own relationship, but this is what he invites us into. Like, can we have this movement of prayer where we can look at the Blessed Sacrament, or we can be in a place of intimacy to be like Jesus, you hear me, you always hear me. You see me, you always see me. I think Jesus wants to invite us into that place.
And just to add to that too, it's just the gift of Jesus' own death, and you think about him being in the tomb, and that we're not far away from that as we get to this point in Lent, and like he has, like, it's almost that his same prayer then, like, Father, you hear me, you always hear me. So the vulnerability of death is real. Like, talk about like ultimate powerlessness, right? So Jesus goes into his passion with this radical sense that the Father is going to do his part. And he's going to offer his life and the Father is going to receive him, right? But in his humanity, it's like there's a lot to do and a lot to offer in the midst of getting to that point. And ultimately, the tomb becomes this place where we wait it out.
Jesus prays that, and now he's in the tomb waiting for his Father to come and be the one then that rolls away the tomb and be the one that says, like, I'm here. And the ultimate victory over death is the gift of the resurrection and new life, right? So Jesus' own like experience, like he knows where this is going, and now he's in front of a tomb, and now it's like, oh man, like the Father's here with me now, and he's going to be here with me then. But there's a lot going on in the midst of trying to get there, right? So I love the poverty of the tomb, the poverty of death, but the reality is that we enter that space with a lot of trust that the Father does his part. Right. And so I know we're going to talk about this, but the vulnerability that it takes to trust in the midst of that powerlessness and that helplessness is just a real thing, and there's no way to prepare for that. Really. There's no way to be like, it's okay. It's not a big deal. Well, death is a big deal. Right. But how do we get to the place where we let that be our prayer? Father, you hear me, you always hear me, even when I die, even when the death is at stake, you come to receive me in the tomb. So it's just really beautiful. And there's a lot of, this is an awesome gospel, and the fact that we all three thought about that one particular line is it's one of my favorites as well. So
Can I say something else?
Yeah.
I don't know if this fits in or whatever, but like just a couple of things where Jesus is intentional once again. It's like he knows, as you mentioned, Lazarus, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep. Let's go see him. And disciples are okay, like let's go see Lazarus. But like Martha and Mary, right? Martha is, anyway, just it can inform us how to pray in the face of tragedy or in the face of like just this, something is, it's just beyond my understanding. And so Martha, in her boldness, goes to Jesus. She meets him before he comes in, right? And she's like, Lord, if you hadn't been here, this wouldn't have happened. It's like right in his face. Like, where were you? Like, you knew this was going to happen. And, he's saying that's the whole interaction. I'm the resurrection. Yeah, I know. Like, and so, but like, where were you basically? And Mary's back at the house. And then Martha goes back and calls Mary. And Mary basically says the same thing, but she says it quietly. She's like, Lord, if you weren't here, this wouldn't have happened, but like, and she says immediately, like when Mary's called, she fell at Jesus's feet. And so she just like kind of more meekly just wrestled with the Lord. But there is this, like, once again, in the face of tragedy, in the face of losing your brother, knowing that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and then literally he can do this or prevent it from happening. Just like, what's our heart? Can we boldly ask the Lord, or can we just, gently, just meekly, just be with him in that time? And once again, it's Jesus' intention to go there, to go to the place where the dead body is, to go to the place where his friend is sleeping, so he can once again manifest the power of the Father. And so it's not random. It's not like, oh, this bad thing happened to me. Lord, where were you? Were you unaware of this? No, he's aware, and he's coming, and there's an intention behind it because he loves you, and your heart is actually the focus for the situation. And so, just to throw that in there too.
Nice.
The end.
End of contribution.
Thank you.
There, and for me, just kind of emphasize the one thing. Like, there's this. It's really important to me. It's the context I use it a lot. Is okay. Like, Jesus knows what he's gonna do, and he knows it's gonna be for the glory of God. He knows he's gonna raise Lazarus, but he's still, like, when he still weeps with, kind of like at the pain of Martha and Mary, he still weeps at the death of his friend Lazarus. I think there's something there that's like so beautiful and powerful about just, okay, like we do, like how we reconcile, how we prevent hope, or like the proposal of hope being like, sort of like a suggestion to indifference. Like, Jesus is still like deeply invested in them, even though he knows in the long run it's going to work out. Like, he's still pained by the fact that there's this, that we live in this valley of tears, and that there's going to be like still going to be tears on this road towards fullness of life and resurrection. Like, this isn't how he wanted it to be, and he's not indifferent towards that. And so when we bring to him like our pains and our sufferings, even though we have like absolute confidence that God is at work for the good in all things for those who love him, that ultimately if we walk the journey with him, it'll be good will come from it. He still like experiences very, very deeply our own pain and our own sorrow in it. And I think that's really really important. So like, because it's never like, that we like, someone brings to us some sort of struggle or suffering, it's never like, well, it's gonna work out, God's good. It's like, no, like we want to enter into an experience it with him. What Father PT said, like, I kind of was rocked by, because it would have been really great if I noticed this beforehand. But this whole, like, we're doing this whole theme of like taking off how you're clothing yourself and allowing Jesus to clothe you, and this idea of I just think there's probably a lot there with, what would you call them? Death clothes?
Grave clothes.
Grave clothes. This taking off how he was bound by these cloths. I think there's something to that, certainly. Do you have anything more on that before? Because it's kind of new to me, but I think there's something really cool there.
I don't. I would like to tell you more about it, but I don't really. I mean, just once again, it's just what he's wearing in there. And even to where I got that from, I'm not 100% sure. It's not like it says it in the Greek or anything like that, or at least that I haven't done the research and looking into that. But
grave clothes.
Yeah, I feel like in the translation it does say that somewhere, because it's not the first time I heard that.
But I think, I mean, even just what you said, like the fact that this is like taking off the clothes of death, putting on the clothes of life again. That's like a thing pointing towards the ultimate reality.
It's like taking off the stench.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about here. Shall we transition to the stench?
I didn't mean to push you on that, but it makes.
I wanted to just say it has a kind of prodigal son theme, right? Like he comes back kind of dirty, and then he's clothed in this like new robe and new life, and so there's something just, I think the death to life, the sin to, like the old man to the new man. There's something and Paul talks about that, being clothed in the new man. So take off the old and put on the new. So I think there's just something really beautiful about it.
Yeah, and then literally it says here, unbind him and let him go. And so, right, he's once again wrapped up in death, if you will.
Yeah.
And so there's freedom now for him to, and like, just imagine Lazarus experiencing life the second time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, just how much freedom he had, and even more so the trust in the providence of the Father, where, like, who knows what he experienced in those however many days, 4 days, right, of being dead. And
It's not nothing.
I don't know.
Like it's not nothing.
Yeah.
Like he was dead, right?
And so, like, this, once again, like the blind man, just the bold witness that he was. And this is what, basically, this is why right after this is the plot to kill Jesus. Like, okay, we have to silence this man. Like, because now it's become too dangerous. And who knows if Lazarus' life was threatened too after, because
I think it says, or at least in some point it says
they
it is.
plotted to kill Lazarus, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or he was a part of that, yeah.
Yeah. But but it's freedom, though. At the end of the day, it's freedom to be a son.
It's wild. It's awesome. I just also got back from IPF, and you probably remember this. One of the teachers has a great clothing image and like prodigal son stuff. Like, just he gave a beautiful meditation, seemingly randomly, which was so wonderful. Like, but when Joseph received his coat or his robe from his Jacob in the Old Testament, and he kind of just unpacked and kind of gave context to the story, to like when Jacob would have had to plan, like, I'm so proud of Joseph, and I want to do something for him, and as a father to a son, and in the midst of that, and then he opens this coat and he realizes that, like, the thought behind it and the intention behind it and the desire behind it, and then the reality of this being stripped of that coat, and then the gift of being when he was in prison, like, he remembered being clothed by his father. And that's what he remembered the face of his father when he put it on for the first time, and the gift of, so these clothing things, like Lazarus dies again eventually, right? As the people always say that, like, well, he's going to be dead at some point, but in the midst, yeah, exactly. But in the midst of that, he'll remember the face of Jesus when he was risen. And he remembered, like, my friend has victory over death, and I'm not afraid to die again. Whether it was a month later, a year later, or years later, that I was once clothed with light. I was once clothed with the mercy of my friend who raised me from the dead, and now I'm gonna die again, because we're all gonna die. But I know he's there waiting for me, right? So the clothing, beautiful. And you remember the face, and you remember like the gift that was given to you. Like the prodigal son is never gonna forget being welcomed back by the Father, and being stripped of the grave clothes, being stripped of the sinful clothes, and being given something new. So it's beautiful.
And actually, just kind of connecting some themes. Last week, we there was this idea of, like, I don't know, but I was blind and now I can see. And there's like this experience that Lazarus is going to have for the rest of his life. It's like, I don't know what he did with them, but he's got, like, I was buried in this stuff. I got, like, my grave clothes. You know what I mean?
I was dead.
I was dead. And it's like,
I'm not dead anymore.
Yeah. It's like,
I'm undead.
Yeah. He always had that. I mean, like, what do you think? What did they do with the grave clothes?
Yeah.
Do you, like, put them on the wall? I don't know.
Burn
bronze them,
burn
baby
It's
shoes.
just such a wild experience. And then his rest of his experience, like, his life's like bro, I was dead.
Mhm.
What do you mean you're dead? Bro, I was dead. So like D-E-A-D. Like stinky dead. Which brings us to the
Nice
next thing.
transition.
Wow, masterful. See,
I just don't, but I don't like. Anyway, this is going to be big word or theme for Father Toups. Last week it was like ask and like don't settle and
Glad
big
you
desires,
pronounced
things
that.
like that. Yes. And this week it is like there's just this idea of like the roll away the stone and the stench. Roll away the stone and the stench. And right. So there's been a dead body in this cave tomb for 3 days, right? And so we know kind of what happens biologically, I guess. I mean, I guess I've never been
We
around
don't
a body.
really know what
I mean, I've
happens,
never
but
been
we
around a
assume what
body for
happens.
dead body for 3 days. I mean, a lot of people have been around bodies for dead days, so dead days, 3 days. Just not me.
doing great.
But there's this idea of like, and it's, that like what you're going, if like we roll away that stone, like what you're going to experience is going to be unpleasant. Like, just like we're giving you a warning, Jesus, like what's going to happen if we move that stone. It's not, it's like, in there, like, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be an enjoyable thing. Like what's back there is like really, to human sensibilities is really awful and repulsive. But Jesus, like, but what Father Toups is emphasizing, you're like, no, he's like, roll away the stone. Like, I'm not afraid of that. Like, I'm not afraid of the stench. And, like, so like roll away the stone, like reveal it to me. If you will, like be vulnerable in this area to me. And, like, I'm not afraid of it. And so before maybe like kind of going to that like a little bit deeper, do you guys have any just immediate reflections on that?
I mean, I think Father Innocent helped me remember when Father Boniface was talking to us about like intimacy or like vulnerability. It's just like, you basically see the inside of me. Like, that's intimacy, right? And so if you can see the inside of me, or like inside of my heart, basically I'm just, if you can imagine, like peeling it open, and this is it. And that's what the Lord wants. And if we're honest, like, our hearts aren't like they're not perfect. Like, there's nothing more torturous than the human heart, where there's all these winding roads and different things like that. And so there will be parts that stink. There will be parts that we just don't like. There will be parts that sometimes, as we mentioned in past episodes, we've come in agreement with sin and we haven't allowed the Lord to be there.
You renounce that, bro.
Hey, that's what we're about here. But rolling back the stone is a painful thing, and it smells and it's stinky, but that's precisely why he came, to be there. And if we could just think about this too, because once again, we're going to profess this as we stand at the Easter Vigil, right? Like, with the beautiful exalted, like, oh, happy fault for Adam, of Adam, that we merited such a Redeemer, where he goes down to hell, to save both Adam and Eve. And I imagine it's not smelling like roses in hell. You know what I mean? Like, he goes to the depths to bring them back up from that. And so, can we invite him into the depths of our own quote unquote personal house, where like we feel isolated from God? You can't be here. There's no way you could speak life into this. And once again, he desires to go there to take us by the hand and carry us out, much like he did Adam and Eve. And so, yeah, my brothers and sisters, take the bold claim, or to stake it all on the fact that Jesus comes to roll back the stone, to be in that stinky place, to be in that place that we think is even unbearable for ourselves. But he wants to go in there and take you by the hand and lead you out, so that way you can experience once again that freedom.
There's a lot going on for me. Just kind of, just really beautiful. The grace that I think is like just that's just so powerful here is that, again, I'm kind of going to use a Sister Miriam line here when she talks about healing. But yeah, like when Jesus stands outside that tomb and calls Lazarus Lazarus out of the grave, like it's like he resuscitates him, right? So now he's like what was dead, like a heartbeat that wasn't
beating is now beating again, right? Like he brings him back to life, like his body back to life. But what's really like profound, like what heals him? I think what heals him is the way that Jesus looked at him when like he's like, take off the burial clothes, and he like unwraps his face, and Lazarus sees the face of Jesus for the first time after being dead for 4 days. Like what happens there? Right? Like that's the resurrection, is when a dead man sees the face of Jesus, right? And that's what heals us. Like Lazarus just didn't want like his heart to be resuscitated, and like biologically I was dead and now I'm alive. I have a heartbeat. But like the healing that happens is the face of Jesus, the presence of Jesus that meets death. So Sister Miriam says, when you like stand before Jesus in your deepest darkness, like he doesn't, what heals you is not like, oh, stop doing that, or like, there's your sins, your struggle. Like, let's just make that go away and then you'll be okay. No, it's actually being loved in it. Like what actually heals us is letting all of that be exposed to Jesus, and Jesus saying, okay, yes, like I want to forgive that or heal that. And I want like real conversion, but okay, like change of behavior. Great. But what heals us is the fact that we let Jesus see us. Jesus, like, look at me in my darkness. Like, look at me when the stench is too great and I don't think, like, I'm overwhelmed by it. And Jesus is going to heal all that needs to be healed, but it's his love and it's his mercy, and it's this gaze of compassion. He's like, I'm here, I'm with you. That's what heals us. And that's what's going to get us to stop sinning or give us some sort of new life. It's his presence. Right? So like Lazarus is like, yeah, like I'm definitely like alive now, but when he looks, when I saw the face of Jesus, like something happened to me, that like the resurrection, the new life happened. It's about him. And that's what he's going to, like Father Angelus, I love, like that's what he's going to remember when he dies again. So it's just wonderfully intimate, that it's not about it like the stench and the sin and the struggle, the darkness. It's not Jesus doesn't want to just come fix that. He wants us to allow ourselves to be loved and seen in that. And that's what heals us.
I get like, anyway, this might be a goofy comparison. Like, is he just Frankenstein, just this person that's just alive because whatever, somebody just resuscitated him, or is he a man in a relationship?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And he like they unbound him, and he looks at his friend and he's like, man, like you are the resurrection and the life.
Right.
Like, and what love that like must have like poured into him that healed him.
Yeah. And sometimes we could be like Frankenstein. I just looked at Father Mark Mary. but the Lord wants us to be in a relationship, right? And so anyway, that was my 2 cents.
Was that all just a setup for calling me Frankenstein?
No, it was actually an actual thought that went through my mind, which is kind of
Would have
sad.
been worth it.
I have something to say now.
Okay, good.
I'm not supposed to mess with the microphone. I'm really sorry, Rob.
I think we know the culprits now.
We all.
Oh, it's definitely me.
He does
Father.
it too.
I was about ready to tap your hand a second ago too.
You talking to me?
Yeah, I'm talking to you.
Did I move my microphone? Or did I just,
Like numerous times, like you move the pulpit when you preach. It's like you're doing a little dance with the pulpit. Anyway.
Oh, Frankie.
Oh, Frankie.
Oh, Frankie.
I was just thinking about this thing of stench. Of what word?
I like the way you pronounce it. Stench.
bench?
Stench. Is that not? I'm not saying
No,
stench.
you are.
Spinach that's been left. Okay, go ahead.
Stench.
Can I just have a couple seconds to say something? Stench. Is that not? I'm not saying.
No,
that.
You're right. You're
good.
right.
It's the cold sore. The cold sore. It's the medicine. It's kind of making me. Just thinking about a leper, right? So like the leper, we don't know what it's like to be dead, or we don't know what it's like to be a leper, but like the progression of leprosy is like, oh, I have some rash, I have something. And then but when it starts to smell, there's like, I'm done. I'm defeated. This is over. Right? The reality of like
rotting,
my skin
rotting.
is now rotting, and I'm going to be isolated and sent out of the town, and this is over. Right. And so the reality of just like, there's no really turning back, and there's no real history. And I can be wrong here, but there's no real history of anybody healing leprosy before Jesus. Like Jesus came and entered into that stench as well, right? So the reality of like the stench in the grave is like, this guy is dead. Like the body starts to smell, the story starts to smell, the reality of his life starts to smell, and this guy's dead, right? So just the reality of the stench, it is discouraging and it is despairing because sometimes things smell, right? But Jesus comes and is not afraid of that, right? And I think this is where you're going to go next. But like, what do we do with that? Like, well, we let him look at it. We let him see it. We let him see all of it, you know. And I have in my notes here, just like I've told Jesus parts of my story, but have I told him all of my story? I've confessed and I've sought healing in particular places in my life, but have I showed him all of the places? Especially with the places of deep shame and the places of like, I love conversations as a priest. Well, Father, I have never told this to anybody before. Yes, this is exactly where Jesus wants to be in this particular place, right? The stench, you know, and because not only does he want to address that thing, but he also wants to address all the stuff around that. I'm done for. I'm despairing. I'm discouraged. I'm disconnected. I'm alone. All the spirits and struggles around that. That's what he comes to raise. That's what he comes to experience the resurrection, right? And so I just think the stench is a powerful image, but I think that's the stench is what we avoid. The stench is the places we'd rather not see, and the rather we'd not show anybody else. And so I think the invitation, obviously, during this Lent is to be like, not that we're okay with the stench, but we're like finally defeated by it. Okay, I'm done. Like this smells, and Lord, I want you to come in and do only what you can do, which is to transform it and raise it from the dead.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Like, what's your heart moved? Like how's your heart moved when somebody says that? Like, Father, I've never told this to anybody before.
I love that. Because that's it's not necessarily about the what happened or what in memory it is, but it's about all the shame that's just suffocating that person. So when they actually bring it into the light and then they actually let Jesus come and love them, something breaks, something shifts. Right. I'm like, yeah, I love that. I live for that.
I just say, because similar for myself, but like our hearts are moved in a human way, but what about the heart of the Father?
Amen.
You know what I mean? Like, what about like the eternal heart that beats for you? Like, so we're rejoicing, like, okay, yes, let's talk about this. And obviously Jesus comes in, but just imagine Jesus's like excitement and joy. Like, I've been waiting for this not my whole life, but your whole life, you know, in the sense of this is where I want to be. And so,
but it's vulnerable because it's like, well, but I've shut that away.
Yeah, and there's no going back after that.
Right.
Like once you open that place up, you can pretend that we didn't have this moment, and you can, but there, it's super vulnerable because once you open the door, again, and it's all good. Like there's a movement and momentum to healing here, but like this is what Jesus wants. He wants us to make the decision to live in relationship with all of our stuff.
I love the follow-up conversation after that because someone reveals that and then they're like, oh my gosh, he's judging me and he doesn't, you know, and then you like disconnect from them or something and you walk back into a place where they are and you go right to him and you now have this beautiful experience of like, hey, Jesus did something, you know, and you see them again and they're almost like relieved. They're like, oh gosh, he like came and sought me out. He still loves me. He still has mercy on me. That's such a beautiful moment because you're like, oh my gosh, I showed him everything and now he's going to avoid me. Now he's thinking I'm horrible. And now and as a priest, it's beautiful. Like the follow-up moment. It's like Jesus seeing him again at some point. Like when all this was over, Jesus goes to Bethany again and sees Lazarus and he walks in the door and there's just this immediate like, remember that? Remember that moment? That was awesome, wasn't it? You know, and so and they're both never the same because of the victory of the Lord and because of his power and his mercy. And as Father Innocent said, like that moment of intimacy and love. Right. And so it's just such a joy because, that's what that's where we're at. That's like the confrontation that needs to happen. Will I show him? And will I open my heart up? And will I let him in to see all of the death in my life, all of the stench in my life? Right. And I think that's what we wanted. That's the big encouragement this Lent. Like, will we have the radical vulnerability and trust to say, okay, Jesus, here is everything.
Yeah, because at that point, the grave has no power over us because Jesus conquered it, right?
In his gaze, right? There's no power over it.
Yeah. And I imagine even for Lazarus, like now that place that was once where he was locked up for 4 days is now a reminder of, yeah, like he came and sought me out and called me out from that too. You know, and he has no desire to go back into that place, you know? And so as crazy as it would be for Lazarus one night to go to sleep and like wrap himself up in his burial clothes and go back into the grave and be like, oh, this is more comfortable. Sometimes it's what we do, unfortunately, with sin. But like at the same time, like the Lord desires to call us out from that and just to once again have the freedom to live in the light and away from those things.
And it's a control thing, guys. I mean, I think it's crazy to think that we would like to remain, like to hide the stench, pretend it's not real. You know, just like we want to maintain a semblance of control over our pain and our suffering. And like Father Angel says, use the word last week of like the infection. Like, no, it's fine. No, it's okay. Like all these different things where we just can like, we can't go on like this anymore. But you really have to give up control. And we have to, again, this vulnerable place of like letting Jesus into all the places. And this is, I don't know, I'm just going to kind of launch into it. But, you know, in the 12-step spirituality, we have to be fearless and kind of reckless in just opening these places of our hearts to the Lord. We have to just finally do it. Okay, like I'm all in, Lord. And usually, and I say this with confidence, that if we are open, Jesus, I know, wants to send us people that will bless us and help us on the journey. Jesus, the delight of his heart is to send us spiritual, you know, mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters to walk this journey with, right? Like that's God's gift to us. So we don't have to do it alone. Sister Miriam, I'm just quoting her all the time, but she says, your heart is a dangerous neighborhood. Don't go in by yourself. Like, you know, and so we want to be with the Lord, but also there's going to be people that help us do this. But like once you're in it, you got to be in it. Like this is what the Lord has longed for, this moment where you're going to fearlessly just kind of in a kind of a holy recklessness, just open up your heart. And again, you don't have to force it. We don't have to, like, it's not our own project. But with the Lord, can we, okay, Lord, like I surrender everything to you. You will lead me. You are good. You are gentle. And you are strong. And so I give this journey to you. But like you have to kind of go all in and be fearless. You can do one thing at a time. You know, he will not let you go. He will not you might feel like you're being crushed by the whole experience. But we stay with the Lord and stay with the people he's given us to help us. And it's a journey, but it's demanding. We have to kind of go all in.
Yeah. And even going back to the parable or to the miracle where, so Jesus says, roll back the stone. And they're like, is he serious? It stinks. Like he's been doing that for 4 days. But they rolled back the stone and they did it. So there had to be people to do it. It wasn't like the resurrection, Jesus' resurrection, where the angel rolled back the stone. It was actual people who had to, okay, I know this is going to stink, but Jesus asked me to. And so like sometimes in your life, Jesus will send people to help you roll back that stone.
That's a great word.
So that way the stench, okay, it's going to stink, but this is necessary. So that way you could come out and things can be healed, you know, and Jesus sends those people along our paths. And so just to embrace them and to really not look at them in opposition, but to say, thank you, you know. But in the moment, once again, it's difficult because it stinks. Like, no, let's leave that closed there. I don't want the stench to get out, but it's real.
Thanks. I was just noticing that Martha is the one who said there will be a stench. It was interesting. Didn't put that together. You know, I think a lot of things, but for now, in part, and I kind of like, I don't want this to come out harsher, like regarding harsher than I need to, like regarding the stench concepts, like, what I'm thinking is like, okay, like just get over it. You kind of got to get over yourself, in the sense of this, of, you know what I mean? Like, so like there's all sorts of doctors and surgeons and nurses who are like helping out with physical things. And a lot of times these things like are really in some ways kind of like gross,
Smelly.
and smell. But it's like, you know what I mean? Like there's like doctors or whoever it is, they're like dentists, whatever. But they're like doing colonoscopies, and it's like, I don't know. I'm like afraid because it's like gross. Like, bro, just get over it. This is what I do. Like this is like I'm not worried about whatever or this thing or that thing. It's like there's just like, okay, there's something there. Like I'm a professional. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about like what I'm focused on and paying attention to is like healing you and getting you well, and like don't worry about me essentially. Like I'm fine. Like I know what I'm doing. I signed up for this, and I think sometimes even counselors probably experience that. Those who are doing all sorts of social work, those who are helping people with all sorts of addiction and things like that. Like okay, like I'm not worried. Like you don't hide. Like just please, just don't hide. Just be honest. Like be real. Like I can handle it. Like I'm not afraid of it. Or like as confessors, I think you go into it. You go into the box, if you will, for people to share their sins and stuff like that. And it's like I don't like what I'm experiencing. What I'm focusing on is you experiencing God's mercy. Like I'm not like lingering on like the evil of the world or whatever. Like I'm not worried of, if you will, like the stench of sin. Like and it's like okay, just. I think, but we, right, we before we go to confession, we're very self-conscious about it. We before we go to the doctor, we're very self-conscious about it. And when the authority or the person there is like, hey, like don't worry about that. I think we just have to like surrender authority, like trust them. And so when the priest says like, don't worry about it, you can be like totally honest, like you should, like just trust us. We're not. When the doctor says like, hey, you don't have to be shy about this. Like trust him. When Jesus says, like I'm not worried about the stench, like. Trust me, right? Because here's the thing, like what Jesus knows is, the way ultimately to bring new aroma into that cave, that area, is to bring new life. And so I'm going to go in and I'm going to bring out the dead body, and I'm going to go into whatever that thing is in your heart or your life that's causing this, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to heal that. I'm going to bring new life there, and then then I'm going to conquer that, and that thing's going to go away. But it's like, I don't know. I think Jesus sometimes is like, we're just like, don't kind of like, don't worry about me. In a sense, like I'm Jesus, like I'm God, I can handle it. I've handled all of it. Just like let me in.
No, yeah. And I've said this before, like he knows.
Yeah.
Like he knows everything already. And so we play this like hiding game with the Lord, like you can't see that. I don't want you to see my heart. Like he's like, hey, I see it already. I know everything. I'm omnipotent, omniscient. And so let me just give me permission to go there, basically. So
I'm omniscient and omnipotent. Relax, I can take it.
that's what Jesus said. What if you say that to Martha?
Martha, relax, girl. I got this. I'm the resurrection and the life. Well,
Did you give Jesus a Brooklyn accent?
I don't know what I
What's
did,
going on
but just relax. Oh, I got this. Anyway, he wouldn't have said that. He wept and was very.
Of course.
But then when he said, Lazarus, come out, he got after it. He said it in a loud voice. So what do we do with this? I guess I had an idea, but I don't need to get into it too much. But yeah, I think this is a real thing. This is just a real thing, and perhaps am I going to go into more detail? I don't think I'm going to go necessarily into more detail, but this is in our part one direction. Okay, this is that thing in your life, like what's going on in your life that's like really like you're even kind of uncomfortable to look at it. And I think honestly, like I think there's space for this, like physically, like are there parts of like your physical appearance that like you avoid in the mirror? Like, and even allow like to like look in the mirror with the Lord and allow him to like, I wasn't talking about, you guys are messed up. You guys are messed up.
Wow.
But and like just to like look at that with the Lord and allow him to like just bless you and to lighten you, even there, And so I think it is just like the Lord is the Lord, and he is good, and he came to go into the tombs. He came for he came for that thing, for all of it. And so just to really trust him with it, and to, if you will, like surrender the stone, to surrender the grave clothes, and let him just let him in, let him resurrect you, let him give you new life, and clothe you with just the dignity that is yours as beloved sons and daughters. All right.
Amen.
Go team.
Go team.
Let's say a prayer. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Lord, we do love you and we praise you and just thank you for the gift of this time together. Thank you, Lord, for the voice, your voice that calls us out of the darkness, that calls us from death to life. And Lord, whoever's listening this day that it just needs your gaze to find and experience the courage to show you everything. Especially the places of most shame, the places of most confusion, the places we've been lied to for so long. We just ask, Lord, that you stand before those graves, you stand before the stench of these places of sin and death, and to call us on and call us out. Help us to hear your merciful voice that calls us into new life. Lord, your will is healing and peace and joy and confidence and relationship. We just ask that we may all experience this land, and even right now, Lord, in this very prayer, a breakthrough to allow you to call us to new life this day. And Mother Mary, we entrust ourselves to your peace and care in prayers. And we pray all this in your most holy name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Thanks, everybody. Thanks. Shout out to my friends at the Big Red House and at the University of Texas, Austin. Had a chance to visit there. Father Jonathan, really, really great priest over there, and some really good people. So I was grateful for the chance to hang out with y'all. Yep.
Shouting out Preeti. She is visiting. Maybe she's gone at this point, but she was visiting at Casa. Maybe she's listening back in Switzerland, Zurich, and so all her friends there. And also to shout out to all the girls at Casa.
Oh,
They get a lot of shout outs.
On their
They
Well
do.
deserved. Well deserved.
They do.
I hear our friends at UMary listen a lot up in Bismarck, North Dakota. So I was hanging out with Father Jordan Dosh, and he says a lot of people on campus listen to. So, hey, all you people out in Bismarck where it's cold, thanks for listening. You can send us a mug too. I don't think we have do we have a UMary mug?
We do not have a UMary
Yeah,
mug.
come on, people.
We don't have
UMary,
a
let's
UT
go.
mug either.
We're just throwing it out there.
Do we? I think we have we have a couple other Texas mugs. We have a couple other Texas school mugs,
Come
but
on.
no UT, huh?
Do we have an A&M mug? They have
Yeah.
a big rival. Well, UT has to step up now.
Well, you got anything? Nothing?
Not great.
All right.
He was on solitude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just in it. Though.
He's still waking up from his nap.
You want to say hi to your DoorDash guy again one more time?
What was his name?
I cannot believe you guys.
That was good. All right. See you, everybody. Bye.
Peace.
Poco a poco vamos a llegar. Somos peregrinos, and you know that's who we are. We make our way. Hey, hey. Little by little, we learn a little more each day that God is love, that life is short, that all will be well. And I know.